Welcome to another episode of the Executive Exclusive. I am your County Executive, Julie Giordano, and with me always is our Director of Administration, Bunky Luffman. So Bunky, thanks for sticking with me. It's been a couple rough months, I think, that we've had, but thank you for being here.
Oh, great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to start off by talking about the month of May. So the month of May has been a crazy busy month for us, especially with proclamations. We had Nurses Week, and then last week we celebrated Correctional Officers Week, which was May 5th through the 11th. There was Teacher Appreciation Week. And then with our correctional officers, jumping back to them, we celebrated Chris Tyler, and we celebrated Ramona White, who was our Employee of the Year, and then Craig Moore, who was our CO of the Year. And we got to go out there and have lunch with them, and it's always a good time. I think that Jameson out there does a really good job at cooking for us. So did you have a good time at their barbecue?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And we have a really good employees out at the correctional facility who care a lot and do a very professional job.
Yeah, I totally agree. And so I told them even there's nothing, I don't think there's enough money to do what they do, like for me to be out there. I wish I could pay them all $1 million, and I know that I can't do that, but we are just so appreciative of everything that they do because it is such a tough environment to be there. You're within those walls all day and, just dealing with a lot of different things. So we are so appreciative of all of our correctional officers, and we really wish we could pay you more money, and we just appreciate you so much. I don't know what else to say about it, but they're...
Well, yeah, and if you're interested in being a correctional officer, we do have positions available.
We do. Put that plug in. I love it. So, all right, so we're going to move on to the county council meeting that just happened. One of the first things that we're going to talk about is the public hearing on the budget. And I had actually written a comment that I'm actually going to read part of it today in just a few moments. But we had a public hearing on the budget, and can you explain to everybody why do we have a public hearing on the budget, and what opportunity does that provide the public, obviously?
Yeah, so this is a public input session, essentially, where the public can come in. Maybe they looked at the budget, which was online, which was on the county website, or maybe they didn't, and they just had an idea of what they would like to see funded. And then it gives them an opportunity to say, hey, what about this project, or I have this idea, or, I work, or I know someone that does this for the county. Are you guys contemplating raises for them? Or, and all of that feedback is really appropriate, and we like it. We also do this for the capital improvement plan. We also have a public hearing that's similar. So.
Yeah, and I think it was interesting. We were sitting in my office because the room was packed, and so we were back in the office and we were listening to public comment. And what was very popular is there were a lot of people there that were for education. And I, coming from the teaching world, wholeheartedly agree, and we talk about how education does need to be funded, but we obviously have financial, constraints. And so we have to figure out what is the best course of action for everything in Wacomico County. So I don't know if you can kind of explain to the audience what maintenance of effort is and what that means for the school system and kind of where we play a role in that.
So at its simplest form, maintenance of effort gives a floor to how much we fund the school system. So and I'll make round numbers up. If we gave them, and we give them way more than this, $1 million this year, we have to give them $1 million next year, or we may have to give them a little more, a little less, based on what the student population does. So we did maintenance of effort this year. However, that maintenance of effort actually is more than $700,000 more than they got last year because of student enrollment went up.
Right, exactly. So last year we ended up proposing $1.3 million above maintenance of effort. The council ended up cutting it down to $800,000, but it was great. And we really pushed for public safety. We knew that the schools were trying to get more SROs. We want to make sure our students are safe. And then this year, again, like you said, it increased $700,000. We had this conversation with Dr. Stauffer, and I think and not to make it political, but as a conservative person, I think that there is this fear about maintenance of effort, because what is not necessarily told is that once you raise maintenance of effort, so let's say one year you have an extra $1, $2, $3 million, and you say, I want to designate this to the schools. Once you say, we're going to give this money, that becomes the new floor. And it sort of scares you sometimes, especially when you're hearing things at the state level. Are we going to have cuts? Like, what is our, do we have to be, how fiscally conservative do we need to be? And so it makes it a little bit difficult, I think, sometimes to always try to go above maintenance of effort because that becomes the new floor. And I feel like I said this to Dr. Stauffer, it would be so much easier as if it just reset back, if we were able to do that. But that's not what happened. So, and we're looking, so education obviously was a hot button topic for the council. So we will kind of see where they go. At this point, could the council add additional money for maintenance of effort?
They're allowed to add to the budget for educational purposes.
Right, exactly. So at this point in time, any people who are watching that feel that we should go above maintenance of effort, at this point in time, it's put into the council's hands. And our suggestion would be to reach out to the council and talk about the importance of maintenance of effort and where that number needs to go up. So that's kind of our suggestion at this point for that. So moving on, there were some other, comments about the budget. There were a couple of questions, and I had actually typed up this comment, and I'm not going to read the whole thing because this is, you can see it's kind of a long comment, but this is what I wanted to read at the council meeting, and I chose not to, because I knew I had a comment later on, which we will talk about, but this is what I was going to say to the council, and this was specifically about the budget. I was going to say, not one of the 7 of you, talking about the council, or anyone in this room know what it's like to be in my shoes. As a matter of fact, there are only 3 others, 2 that are living, that have any idea the difficulties, the time, the effort, and the thought that's put into a budget. And to have the legislative body prematurely react with press releases and inaccurate and incomplete information stated at community meetings and news interviews before any work sessions or discussions had happened, or touting out there, which is still happening now, it's the council's budget and we're going to cut it. It's very disheartening and disappointing, and trying to almost rally troops to stand at the podium to criticize or degrade us, as a department is really not productive. And it's not good for them, it's not good for me, and it's our citizens deserve better. And so I said, I want to make something very clear that there is only, and I've said this earlier today, there is one line in that budget that personally affects me, and that's the county executive salary. And it's an elected salary. It can't be touched. It can't be cut. But as far as everything else, cutting things, I understand that cuts have to happen, but you are only affecting the employees. They're the ones affected. You're affecting the organizations of this county. That's who's affected. Public safety is affected. Education is affected. Us personally, we are not affected personally. We care about the citizens. We care about the things in this community. But at this point in time, everything that we have put forward is for the betterment of the community. And the last thing I was going to say is that nobody knows how difficult it was for us to meet with over 20 departments and organizations in less than 3 days. And each department explaining and defending their needs and wants. And we tried so hard to make sure that each entity got something. And they may not have gotten everything they asked for, but we worked the numbers and tried our hardest. And I don't know if you have any comments on that, but do you feel kind of the same way on how hard we worked on this budget? And I feel kind of deflated at times with it.
Well, I think because it's not public, we have a series of meetings, with the department heads. We have discussions that literally last for months under department heads. We start talking really by the end of the calendar year. If they come up with something that's capital, or they come up with something that's big, or to have an idea, we'll put a note on that and let's talk about it during budget. So we start doing that, months and months ahead. Mm-hmm. So we do go through a very deliberative process, talking to a lot of people. And when you finally create the puzzle that is the budget, you just can't give every department what you would like to. I mean, Rehoboth Beach is hiring a town manager for $250,000 a year. We're not sort of a wealthy county that can sort of give those sorts of salaries to people. Maybe at top of the market is what I'll call that salary. But we will do what we can for our department heads. We'll do what we can for our entry-level employees and everyone in between, and to give the best services we can for the citizens of Wicomico County and the visitors of Wicomico County. So we can only do as much as we can do. We have to have a balanced budget, and that's good so we don't end up in the mess the federal government's in, but it's also mandated we have a balanced budget.
Right.
So we do the best we can within the constraints we have, and then after we present it to the council, then there should be a good negotiation that, honestly, a negotiation that we have with them on budget items doesn't have to be rancorous. There doesn't have to be anyone walking away with animus. It's, hey, we did this budget at the time we were thinking this. Like last year, they cut maintenance of effort for education by $500,000. And most, if maybe, or all of it, I can't remember exactly, but a portion at least of that went to raises toward employees. And you agreed to that. If they cut, they're allowed to cut the budget, but they can't say add to the budget except for education without your agreement. And I don't remember you really turning down any of that. So there was a really good product that came at the end of the negotiation last year, and I'm hopeful that the same will happen this year.
Yeah, and I'm a little frustrated because I was hearing through the grapevine that there were some questions, there were some raises that I gave to our department heads, and a lot of entities I think were saying, well, why did she give it there and not to us, or why didn't you put it here or there? And I want to make something very clear, and not to get too far into the weeds in this, but a couple years ago, the county council adopted a study, okay, it was called the Bolton study, and there were certain stipulations with the Bolton study. One thing that the county ignored, which I find to be outrageous, but is the fact that they ignored the experience of our employees, especially when it came to our department heads. We have department heads with 30 years of planning and zoning experience, 30 years of emergency services experience, 20 years of finance, and none of that was taken into consideration at all. And the raises that we proposed are not even appropriate in the fact that they should be more. For example, if you look at finance, the finance director in Worcester County makes $170,000 a year. Now, their budget's a little bit higher than ours, and I get that, but it's still the same job. And so our finance person is balancing and taking care of a budget at $193 million, $195 million, proposed $198, and she's paid $114,000 a year. That's ridiculous to me. And so there were quite a few people that were very much left behind when it came to this study. And in all honesty, it was time to right a wrong. And we were able to not only give people the raises that they deserved. We were able to give raises across the county. We were able to fund multiple aspects of public safety. We were able to give our dispatchers 8% raises. We were able to build a school. We're getting ready to build Franklin Primary, even though it's through bond. You know, that's what we have proposed. And all of which, and we still lowered the tax rate. I don't know how you ask for a better budget than that. Now, of course, I'm a little bit biased because it's our budget, but we really tried very hard to work with our different departments and figure out ways to make their needs available, like to make it, you know, put into the budget. And it's difficult. And I don't think people really realize the amount of work that goes into it, which is, you know, kind of frustrating. So.
Well, and the determination that county made back then was that if you had worked in, say, finance for 20 years, but you had only been in that position, the director position, for a year, you didn't get a raise based on your 20 years of experience. You got a raise based on 1 year in that position. Where, if you're in a director position of any part in the county and that happened to you, you could literally quit, reapply, and negotiate for your salary and almost certainly make more money. And so it didn't make any sense to us that we would have these folks we know that are on staff that could literally quit and ask us for more money, which would be as part of the market rate, and we would probably have to hire them back at that amount. So it just didn't make, now maybe back then that made fiscal sense, maybe that was a fiscal decision to balance their budget, but now we believe we have it in the budget to offset that and to, you know, give these folks the healthy raise they deserve that they should have probably gotten a few years ago.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and what Bunky is saying is that, like, if we have a new department head or a new person coming into the county, they can negotiate. They can negotiate their salary, and which has happened. But if they've been in the county, their lack of negotiation is nothing. And so it made no sense, and we were changing that dynamic. So we'll see what happens. I know it was a little bit of a problem, although I find it kind of odd because we didn't hear I didn't get a specific email or questions about that, or when we were in front of council, no questions were asked. But I kept hearing these rumors, and so that's why I had sent an email to the council explaining, hey, this is why we did this. One last thing about the budget, and then we're going to move on to one other thing, or a couple other things in the council meeting, is it's just so frustrating. We have these budget meetings coming up, and this is the opportunity for council to ask questions. It has been brought to my attention that a specific council person, but it might be shared by all, I'm not really sure, feels that we should have had these discussions prior to submitting the budget. And that's just not how the process works. It hasn't worked that way since 2006. So it has never worked that way. So the way that it works is that we meet with all the department heads, we present the budget, and then from that time, from the third Tuesday in April till June 15th, that's when they ask the questions. They don't get information prior to. And I don't know how to make that more clearer when it's stated right in our charter, but I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I mirror this to my time at the state at DNR. So the governor presents his budget in January. But the budget's being worked on literally for months. It's a huge budget. And so there would be internal conversations amongst all departments that, hey, we want to, he wants to fund this amount, let's say $50 million for this, and then ultimately in his budget, it goes for $40 million. Well, that internal, negotiation or what have you happen, but if that becomes public, then the public doesn't think, it can be spun that it wasn't funded $40 million, it was cut $10 million. So that's why we need the ability to have an internal dialogue with our department heads and then pull from every one of them and really talk in a very honest and open way about what is your priority here. Like, if we can only give you this much money, which of these two things makes sense to do in this budget? And if this was an open, more open process where, the council would be there or the public would be there, then I don't know that we get that sort of frank discussion, which is why this is the way it is, not just in our county, but in every county, and in fact, in the state as well.
Right.
This is how you craft a budget. And then you present the budget, and then if there's any questions, we field the questions, and what we've asked the council to do, not just on this, but on several things, please email us or call us ahead of time. That way you can, in telling us what you're going to ask, if you think of it today, and that way when we're there, we will have an answer for you, or we can give you an answer ahead of time. Then we can move on to something else. Unfortunately, there's a lot of times where we get questions for the first time when we're in front of the council, and we answer them the best we can, and then sometimes we have to say, you know what, we'll go back and check and we'll bring the information to you.
Right, and I think it would just be more productive if there was more communication beforehand. So we're not going to go against the process that has been put into place, not just at the state level, but at our county level since 2006, because there's a couple of people that want the information prior to. We are required to give the council the budget, and their time with that budget starts the third Tuesday. It doesn't start beforehand. And so they might not like it, but that's the process. And 3 of those council members are aware of that. They've been on the council for quite a bit. So, and that's going to move us on to public comment. So there were a lot of public comments, and of course, I definitely took some arrows and a beating. And it's okay. It is what it is. I got a lot of reach out. Hey, are you okay? Is everything all right? I got home, and my husband said to me, he's like, I'm not even in this, and I'm crushed because I know your intentions, and your intentions are good when you're doing things. And I told him, I said, it's just part of the job. And so for those of you who reached out to me, thank you so much, and I do appreciate you. But I also want people to know whether you were cheering those comments on or you were thinking, what the heck is going on here? That is this much of this job. It's such a small piece of it. And, unfortunately, you're going to have people that are upset. And sometimes the arrows are at me. Sometimes the arrows are at the council. I need to start putting you in front of me, Bunk, I think, and you can take the arrows. But what was frustrating, though, and I think if you are a fan of Eastern Shore Undercover, he put a video out about this. There are specific rules in the council, and it has to do with your demeanor on how you present things. derogatory remarks and name calling and all those types of things are not allowed. Personal attacks are not allowed. But what it seems is that if they're personally attacking me, it's fine. And if they're personally attacking me, 3 minutes doesn't matter, and that's what the public is seeing. And I saw a lot of comments about this and people reaching out because they see that unfair behavior. If a council person is called out specifically, they stop it right away, which they should, because they need to follow that. But I don't feel that it should be a platform for people to try to, this is kind of strong language, but publicly humiliate or degrade, not just me, but if it was, one of our department heads or, anyone, like that is not the place for that. That is not good for the county. It is not good for the council. It's not good for us. It's just bad business. This cannot be a gripe session all the time and this bad mouthing, back and forth. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but it's just not an appropriate time to do that. And you're allowed to voice your concern. I'm not saying that. Don't not voice your concern. But again, I don't know how productive that is.
There's a way to voice a concern and it be strongly worded and also at a more professional level. And also typically people, when they do public comment, they're not really mad at a specific person, elected department. They're mad at a policy. And the best public comments, and I think the ones that gain the most traction and lead to change, are specifically ones that target specific bad policies or those sorts of things. But I'll bring this up as an aside, what I think the public needs to understand, and I've said it before, on the Jeep event is, Mr. Hoffman, Livewire, had a legitimate contract for a year. If we were to break that contract and be in violation of the contract, break it without cause, and there's no cause to break it, we would be bringing potential litigation onto the county that the taxpayers would have to pay for our legal to fight, and we would probably lose the suit because there's no reason to break the contract. So what you've said before is, look, we'll do the event, we'll see how this contract goes. If it doesn't, go well, maybe we don't renew, maybe we don't do something next year. So I get that some people are against the event or the contract. I understand it, but there's a time associated with it. So, but I think the Jeep event went well. There didn't seem to be any incidents. There didn't seem to be the noise that people had feared. There wasn't. I don't recall there being anyone pulled over. It was exactly like Mr. Hoffman said it would be. There was not, monster trucks on the road or this kind of thing. There were street legal Jeeps. The staging all happened at Kylan Barn. I'm not aware of any incidents over there. So I think it was a really good event. And I think that the community voiced their concerns. Some of it was out of fear for things that could happen. And I don't think that a lot of those things happen, or maybe any of them. So I understand, and it's not that I didn't hear or you didn't hear the voice of them and their concerns. We did, but we also recognize that we're doing business with a vendor that we have a year-long contract with, and we can't just break the contract. Yeah. We just can't do it. It's not good. Not only is it not good and would bring liability, then if you want to do business in our county or with our county, what does that say to a potential business opportunity that we might not even know about yet if we're breaking a contract, then potentially having to fight it in court? I mean, it's just not a good thing. So this contract has a year before it expires. So.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. I cannot set the precedent where if there are a group of citizens, as strong-willed as they may be, 7 people, 6 people, whoever it may be, that have a problem with something in the county, that as soon as they come up to the council, then, oh, okay, the event's over and we're not doing it. We wouldn't have anything. We wouldn't have anything in the county because, there are some people that have strong feelings about whatever it may be. There might be people who don't like the fact that we have the rodeo, or they don't like the fact that we have the, I can't even think of what happens over in Winter Place Park, the state fair or the county fair. You know what I mean? Like, so it's very frustrating to me that I wish people could have understood that, and we, like you said, we had the event went great. We were out there all weekend. I wanted to be immersed in the experience, not just because I thought it was a cool event, but because I wanted to see firsthand what was going on. And like you said, it was exactly what he told us it was going to be. And I feel bad for him. I do. And that's why I did the public apology to him, which kind of goes into the legislation piece. And I'm not going to dwell too much on this, but I am just going to say reactive legislation is bad legislation. Targeted legislation is bad legislation, because what happens is there's a bunch of holes, and they're starting to get to that now where they're starting to see, well, this may affect this or this may affect this. At the end of the day, we can't ban motorsports in Wacomico County or try to put legislation where everything has to come through the county council. Like, that is not good legislation. At the end of the day, how about this? How about we have a good working relationship and we talk about it? And after the year, if we come back and say, hey, look, I'm not really sure this is for Wacomico County, cool, okay, we'll move on from it. But at the end of the day, it was a good event. And I think, that land in particular has good potential for events like that, but also potentially maybe for a park later on, which is what seems to be the new driving force of the community. So before it was, we're not really sure we want to have the event, and now it's, well, we were promised a park, and so we want to make sure that that's not taken off the table by doing these type of events, which was never really the case. So
yeah, and having been deputy mayor of Del Mar, and that is not in Del Mar, that community, but it's just outside of Del Mar, and I grew up in Del Mar. I know some of the folks that live in there, and no one from the executive's office has ever said that the Conley Mill area, that the parcel we use to mine dirt now or dig dirt for the landfill shouldn't be a park eventually. However, we still have about a decade of dirt, and we talked to previous deputy administrator Weston Young. He said the dirt at that time, when he was looking at the acquisition, was worth about $20 million. So if we were to turn that into a park today, the taxpayers would have to start buying dirt for the landfill when we already own the dirt at Conley Mill, which is why that's a strategic, tax savings, the fact that we have that and are able to do the operation. But once we're done, that resource is mine, that's exhausted, we've done it. Maybe it would make a great park. No one's ever said it wouldn't. So that's why I didn't kind of understand the Save Conley Mill Park, because no one ever said that it shouldn't eventually be a park. I think that's a good option. We'll just have to see, in 10 years what it looks like, do a feasibility study, and do the highest and best use is usually, that's a DNR term. When I worked at DNR, that was our thing, was highest and best use of something. So that's, we'll look at that then, but we can talk about it now and in the subsequent years as it gets closer and closer. So.
Yeah, so, we'll see what happens with that situation, and I'm going to voice my concern. Overreaching legislation is the last thing that we need in this county. Government regulation is the last thing that we need in this county, and I know that those councilmen know that. So we'll see how that goes. And then the last topic, we'll end on a good note, is the Ward Museum and SU's Performing Arts Center. So just to quickly recap, I'm sure you have heard, we will be moving the downtown library out of downtown, out of the Armory building, and we will be moving it to the Ward Museum, hopefully with an opening around 26, 27, which is super exciting. And we were at GSC, Greater Salisbury, and I just complimented Seth and Dr. LaPree. So Seth Hirschberger is our director of the library, and Dr. LaPree is our president. They've both been in those roles 2 and 3 years. And just the vision that has occurred just in that short amount of time is pretty amazing. And I said to Dr. LaPree, I was so happy that we are finally able to, have a partnership with SU. Salisbury, the city of Salisbury gets them all the time, but we finally get that. And then they'll be tearing down our library and hopefully building this $100 million Performing Arts Center. So any quick comments on that?
Well, yeah, real quick. Another person in that equation was Eli Maudlin, and I met him when he was a Salisbury University student, and he was interviewing then Mayor Carl Anderton, so that's how long ago it was. And to see him go from, I don't know, he was probably 21, 22, to this part of his career, I mean, he was brilliant then, and he's had a wonderful career with the Comptroller's Office, now at Salisbury University, and he is such an asset to our community, and I was so glad that he was part of all of it, because he really is an incredibly talented person. Also, I just want to address something with it. The objections that I've heard really have to do with things that are now, but we wouldn't be in the Ward Museum for a while. One of them is HVAC, because obviously that was an issue. The library does not need museum quality HVAC, and I'm not an HVAC expert. I don't know a lot about what a museum would need in HVAC, other than I know it's incredibly expensive versus what a library would need. So that significantly reduces the cost of that repair, is that we would have library quality HVAC. Also, parking downtown. You're going to bring a performing arts center, where you're going to park. Well, the performing arts center can't even be begun until we move out, which isn't happening overnight. The building is demolished, and then the building is rebuilt as a performing arts center. So we're talking years and years. So there is a time where the city of Salisbury and Salisbury University can sort of model, what is this going to look like? Is that parking garage on the what I call the library lot, I don't remember the number of it, is that going to be built? Is lot 10, which is where the hotel conference center and I believe a parking garage, is that going to be built? Which of these? So there may be a more accommodation for parking 5 years from now than there is right now. So that I get that that's a concern, but we do have time, or SU and City of Salisbury has time to address that. And on the HVAC, of course, I think that's going to be addressed, and that's part of a grant with that Seth, our library director, is looking at getting, which, if I remember right, the state pays 86% of.
Yeah, so we'll be, I think we're on the hook for like 1.4, I think, something like that. It was a smaller amount anyway, because the state was going to purchase that. So we are super excited about that, or the state was going to help fund it. Super excited about that. It will, it's going to be a new landscape, and I think that that's really exciting, and we get to be a part of that, as this administration, so that's very exciting. So the last thing I want to say is it is Law Enforcement Appreciation Week, and we are so grateful for our law enforcement, not just our Wacomico County Sheriff's Office, but also our surrounding municipalities. Thank you for the work that you do, and please, if you have not gone to Eastern Shore Undercover page, I feel like I'm giving Earl a lot of plugs today, but if you go to Eastern Shore Undercover and scroll down, you will see a song that a very amazing artist that was just introduced to me yesterday. It's the first time that he has put this out in the public. I think he did it yesterday in DC. It's a rendition of Alleluia, and it's for law enforcement specifically. It's a wonderful song, so please go listen to that. If it doesn't bring a tear to your eye, then I don't know what to do for you at that point, but it's a really great song, and so we want to direct you over there. So other than that, I know that we have taken a lot of time. There was a lot of things that happened, and there's so many good things that are going on, great things that are going on. So for those of you that have reached out again to me, thank you. If you're feeling sorry for me, don't. We're okay. It just happens. This is just a little bit of a rough spot, and so we're going to work through it. We're going to figure out how to make this better and how to make this work with our community out at Shadow Hills and with the communities that are concerned about Conley Mill or want to make Conley Mill a park, and we're going to look at every way, shape, or form to see how we can make things happen. So, and work with the community. So, other than that, Bunk, do you have anything else you want to add before we head out of here?
Nope, nothing to add.
All right. Well, thank you all for tuning in, and we will catch you next time on the next episode of the Executive Exclusive. Have a great day, everyone.